So here we are, we're at SHOT Show. I'm sitting here with the president and CEO of Cobalt Kinetics, otherwise known, or people might know you guys as the Cobalt Guns Company. This is Aaron Quinn. Quinn, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man.
I'm stoked to have you here.
I'm super glad to be here.
This has been sort of this confluence of events that have happened in my own life and through my journey that's kind of put us here in the same room together. I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm going to just be kind of a fanboy for a second because I'm a huge fan of the company. And part of that is the influence that some of the people along my journey have had through your company and how that's influenced me to ask questions, to connect with people. And one of the things I find myself very fortunate to have done was been connected with this incredible group or circle of humans, people. And it just so happens to be in an industry that I'm very passionate about. And that has just led to all kinds of other things. And so here we are in Las Vegas at SHOT Show, and you're sitting across from me, and I got lots of questions for you, man.
I'll try to have all the answers.
I think one of the things that I want to start off with, just jumping right in, and this is the one that I get from people when I sort of made an announcement. I was like, you do the social media post, hey, here's who's coming, and they see the list of people and they saw your name on it. They're like, dude, how'd you get that guy? Like, and we don't know anything about him. This is going to be awesome. Like, I really don't know that much about the guy behind the curtain, kind of the wizard behind the curtain thing. And I go, man, I don't know either. I have zero intel on this guy. I don't know anything about him, which makes this an interesting interview for me. And way to go. You're looking at me like that sounds so weird.
This makes this an awkward interview for me. I looked at that list and I'm like, you've got all of these bad dudes that have been there, done that, super talented guys, and then like dorky me in there going, one of these doesn't fit. So that is weird.
Well, I think the interesting part about that is a lot of those bad dudes, in there have, they're very, very much connected with your company. Right. So I think that's probably where a lot of that comes from. And like, again, part of the privilege that I have is talking with people at sort of all ends of the market spectrums, right? And, from the end user like me, who's just Joe Citizen, who's looking to improve his training, have good quality stuff, gear, wants to understand how it all works, but also has a limited bandwidth to the knowledge that I have or the training that I can get. And then you working with this, from that level in terms of where the product ends up, all the way up to the most elite tier 1 type people in the country that carry a gun and use a gun for a living, or a firearm for a living, and they're choosing Cobalt for a reason. And I don't know all those reasons. I really don't. And so to kind of preface this conversation before I start really getting into it, or the questions with you, is what I hear, though, at the end of the day, when I ask the question about Cobalt, or people bring up Cobalt, whether I'm prompting it or they are, it always, 100% of the time, comes down to, and the people there. They talk about the people behind the company. And last thing I'll say before we get into this is that, and kind of, I think, laying the groundwork for you for this conversation, is that I see there's this, you're making choices like in decisions on the people, right? And this is what I've gathered in the last couple of days and hanging around your booth and talking with your folks. You've chosen very, very specifically who you put on your team, but when you look at the quality of the talent and the level of people, and this also goes back to the end user who are choosing to use your equipment or use your product, they choose you. They don't have to, these people were somewhere else or were doing other things and were very successful in their own right and have chosen Cobalt. More specifically, they've chosen Aaron. It's what it always comes down to. It's like, and I just saw what Aaron was doing, and I believe in what this company is doing, and I believe in where it's going, and I believe in what it stands for, and that's why I'm here. And that's attracted all these other people along my journey that have influenced me. So that's just kind of my piece, again, in fanboying just for a second. But I want to know about you, man. Like, so who is this guy that's running this really top tier company that's getting so much attention in a different kind of way? And what I mean by that is it's the users that are talking about it, not like it's about, again, like I said, about the people, and it's kind of coming from this groundswell from the bottom up is the way I see it from my perspective. But let's talk about Cobalt, man. Let's talk about Cobalt first. Let's talk about, just the company as a whole and where you fit into all that.
Okay. I mean, kind of addressing where that is, I don't see it as them choosing me individually. I feel like we choose each other. And the cool thing is with all of these people, we've there's a deliberate process we go through. And I'm not a social media guy. I have an Instagram account that is as like empty
Okay.
as can be. Like I'll post a story, but I'll post a story that I've been tagged in it, so I'll repost stuff.
I gotcha.
But before Cobalt, I didn't have one, and even when I bought Cobalt, I didn't have an Instagram account until I started getting more and more into it. So a lot of these guys, I didn't necessarily know. I didn't know their backstories as much. I don't know what their influence is. I don't think I still understand what influence on Instagram is.
You're blessed then, man. You're blessed because it's weird. It's a weird place, dude.
I've been trying to figure it out for a couple of years, but that's just one thing I can't. And so I'd be introduced to an individual, or I would, see someone in something, whatever it is. And it's hard for me to justify working with someone based off of what someone else says. And so we've always gone through this almost like a courtship. Mm-hmm. I won't talk to someone and like they won't be working with us in a week, 10 days, a month. Some of these guys, it's 4 or 5 months of us going back and forth, and a lot of it's behind the scenes. And that's an important process to me because as I've seen, you have perception that everyone takes based off of a video, based off of a post, based off of just a jadedness even sometimes where it's very negative, and you get that, the term shill is out there all the time, and mm-hmm. people just think, well, it's money, it's this, it's, marketing, it's whatever. And it's important to me that, I can't control what anyone else thinks or how they perceive a scenario, but inside, I know that the people we have are extremely genuine, and they genuinely either like the product or they like the direction in a way that they know we're going to listen to them and make changes to meet their needs or wants. Mm-hmm. It's that for me, it's way more mutual than it is them choosing me. Like I'm literally a nobody. Maybe the rest of the conversation will be awkward because I'm just not that guy.
I hear you.
But you asked Cobalt, like how did all of this go about?
Yeah, I think you got it in there. I think you just did a really good job with that. I think that really sets the stage for why we don't know that much about you, or why I don't know that much about you, mm-hmm. and how this conversation is going to go. So I'm going to be really specific about how I ask you questions. But in the talking about Cobalt, you got to talk about yourself because I am interested to know. I really don't know how you came about Cobalt. Like, how did that start? So maybe we do reverse engineer this a little bit, and you talk about yourself and just kind of where do you fit into the industry? How did this happen for you? And when did Cobalt become a thing?
Mm-hmm. My entire life, I have loved firearms and knives. I don't know which one I actually like more. Just weapons in general. History is a big passion of mine. I grew up in the South. I'm from Georgia. And so I grew up in elementary school learning about the Civil War, mm-hmm. and then other wars throughout history. And I just gravitated towards it. And the weapon side, I've always been into firearms, mm-hmm. always been into guns. And in 2015, I wanted to be a part of of the industry, not the industry necessarily, but I wanted to be a part of a store. So I did a little bit of investing, and in that process, actually, this is the irony of this is fairly funny. 2015, walk into my buddy's store. He's super excited. And he's going, dude, look what I just got. It's on the wall. It's a company out of St. George, Cobalt Kinetics. And I looked at it and I'm like, do you even know me? I would never own that gun. That is not my style at all.
Why? What did it look like then?
At that point in time, the billet the billet AR was more of a commodity and a higher end, but it was, the dimensions were a lot wider. They were thicker, heavier, bulkier. So it had that. It had all these sharp lines and weird angles and spikes on the end of the handguard. It was, I keep a picture of that gun with me, just kind of think back and kind of remind myself of the path that I got here. But it was like a blue, like almost like your shirt color, and then a red barrel and a red buffer tube, just super flashy. And if anyone who knows me, like, you're going to see me in the same brand of pants every day. You're going to see me in a t-shirt every day, and probably some beat up Vans. And that's who I am. Very simple.
Less is more.
Less is, no, not necessarily. I think the simplicity of it is a choice that I don't have to make every day. There's not a complex, what am I going to wear today?
It's like a uniform, right?
Yeah, almost.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, I would never own that gun.
Okay. Yeah.
Ever. At the time, I was in pharmaceuticals. I spent about 8 years in pharma.
Okay.
And I was a consultant for the longest time. I kind of call myself a pharmaceutical economist. And people asked all the time, and it was a really niche consulting gig that I had, because there weren't many, if any, others. I would go into pharma companies and find their lowest performing products and identify ways to increase that by restructuring,
like from a product development perspective,
like dead product.
Got it.
In the generic drug market, there could be 100 different versions of one drug. Okay. Multiple of the same drug within one manufacturer, even just with, different codes that bill differently based upon,
it's a machine.
Yeah. If I go too deep into that, I might get some people angry. But so I would identify those things. And actually, as I'm sitting here thinking about this, the way that I structured that research and process to move forward it plays a lot into what we do at Cobalt. But I would look at the drug itself, what category it was, who it affected, and this was all non-narcotic stuff. Okay. A lot in dermatology, a few in it was all non-narcotic stuff. Okay. But I would then go to physicians and a group of physicians, throughout the country, and then I would talk to pharmacists and pharmacies themselves, and identify what the struggles were. Why, from a pharmacist side, if you're given the opportunity to choose a generic, why do you choose what you choose? Okay. From a physician's side, when you're prescribing for this ailment, whatever the purpose behind it, why do you choose this over this? And I would start to gather all of this information, then take it back to the manufacturer and say, if you do this, this, and this, if you structure it in this way, I guarantee you're gonna increase, whatever percentage it was, and developed a really cool piece around that, and carried that through to 2020. COVID hits, and February 2020, all of my travel got cut because everyone's did in that industry. Yep. No shows, no opportunity was really weird. And
Yeah, even walking into doctor's offices is going to be restricted, right? Because if they're not closed, then you couldn't even go with a family member, to the hospital if they were having a baby, for crying out loud. It was nuts in places.
Bizarre times.
So it shuts all this down for you.
Shut it all down, and so it just became Zoom meetings and phone calls and spreadsheets. And had a property in St. George, 500 acres. It was nothing at the time other than a little driveway that went up and a little parking area that my truck actually pushed on its own. So, but got great cell coverage and just propped up a lounge chair, computer, and my phone. And I spent all day out there. And, between phone calls, I would shoot. And someone called me one day and said, "Hey, Cobalt Kinetics is selling a Connex box. It's got Galotech in it. It's got gun racks. They want like $3,500 for it. It would look really cool at your property." I'm like, "All right, I'll go check it out." And I walked in and it was full of guns. And it being COVID time, I had an FFL by this time.
Hold on a second. Did you say $3,500 for a Connex box full of stuff?
No. I was just going, the $3,500 was just for the Connex box itself.
Okay.
But when I walked in, it was full of guns.
Got it.
Like, it's like 200 something guns in there. And it was like, walk in, I'm like, oh, this is neat.
That's cool, yeah.
Yeah. So, but we couldn't, guns were really scarce at that time because everyone was buying them. And so I asked them, I'm like, well, are any of the guns for sale? They said, yeah, all of them are. I mean, it's kind of weird to ask a company if, their products for sale. But, yeah, everything's for sale. We're selling the entire company. Kind of, hit me. Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, you can flip these guns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I went out of pharmaceuticals. I hate my life. It was miserable. Money was great. Travel was bad. Everything outside of the financial side was horrible. Quality of life, it was just miserable. And so I did some thinking. I had a partner at the time and went back, discussed it, took him over there. We made an offer that night and it was an asset purchase. So diligence.
This can happen pretty fast.
Yeah, whatever. So 9 days later, signed the documents and I was out of pharmaceuticals.
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that.
All right. So that's, you start to look at opportunity and the things that are happening. You can flip the guns, right? So you could make a profit off of that. But what the hell are you going to do next? What was the plan? There wasn't a plan. What happened next, I guess, is maybe more of the question.
Yeah. So everything I do in life is, I try to be extremely calculated.
I can tell.
And look at, thanks. When I examine something, I'm going to look at what the desired outcome is, but then I want to try to find as many alternatives, consequences of what could happen. And this was one of those times where I just saw guns. And
it's completely out of character.
Yeah, it's a weakness. And I did not realize the reputation that Cobalt had. Obviously, I had no records. I couldn't contact dealers. It was a known in there. But I realized really quickly that one, I didn't like that gun. I wasn't gonna continue on with that line. But then I had to rebuild a lot of stuff and repair that reputation, repair that brand.
When you say stuff, what do you mean? When you had to repair it, what do you mean?
Just the perception.
Perception.
As well as the relationships that dealers had with the
directly
brand.
with the company. So were there employees of this company at that time, or you were just buying the assets? There was nothing really else going on there. How was that structure?
There really wasn't. They had been trying to sell for about a year.
Okay.
And because of COVID and everything, they were furloughed, and maybe there were a couple here and there or part-timers. So no, I wasn't taking any employees. I had set up some interviews with people that had been employed previously there. I rehired the Cerakoter because I did see a lot of his work, and he's an incredible asset and really good at what he does. And he's still with us today. And they had an in-house design engineer. And I first contracted with him just to see how we meshed, how we got along, if he could, take what's in my head and
that courtship piece again,
and put it down. Yeah, absolutely. I learned real quick. And about 45 days later, I made a job offer to him and brought him on full time because we just clicked from a productivity perspective. I can tell him what I want, and I'll draw it. Whether it's like on dry erase or something else, and it doesn't look at all like what.
But he can get inside your head.
But
and make some sense of it.
Translates it into exactly what I'm thinking. And I wanted to the opportunity was there, and so I flip the script and do what I want.
Yeah.
Do what I think makes sense in that platform.
I think so again, the out of character move, and you said like weakness. Right. And I look at it as like, or, subconsciously it's knowing an opportunity when you see one, and there's a risk assessment that's happening there, but maybe secretly, unknowingly, or maybe knowingly, and not wanting to admit it because you didn't have a plan and it just doesn't make sense, knowing that this shit's going to work. Like we're going to make this work. I don't know. I'm just putting that out there.
Oh, steps were definitely skipped. Like definitely skipped.
I mean, there's a lot that goes into purchasing a company. There's a whole hell of a lot more when you have to rebuild, and that sounds like a complete and total overhaul. So if you had to like compare and contrast to what you got then to where you are now, and it's not a long time. I mean, COVID was basically, we're going to be 3 years from like the shutdown piece, which you brought up, in less than 30 days, when things like everything started to shut down. So we're talking 3 years. In 3 years' time, what's happened with the company in that amount of time? Because what you're doing, like I said, and I sort of alluded to this before, I mean, getting into the hands, the new product, the development, the distribution, the manufacturing, the distribution, the marketing, the branding, behind it, that seems like record lightning pace to be able to make the kind of impact that you're currently making in an industry that is as massive, as fast-moving, as is innovative. There's a new brand every week, and something, there's new gear. And just keeping up with all of that, what's the difference then to now? I mean, and I just kind of said some of those things, but it's out there. But what does the company look like from a structure perspective?
We have more than a couple employees. I think there's 16 full-ish time employees and some consultants, and then independent reps. And not most of us, about maybe a third of us actually are in St. George proper, in the shop. And the rest are kind of scattered throughout the country.
Okay.
The marketing and sales side is based out of Florida.
Okay.
With Gabe. And that's...
So it goes from you and your partner to now 16-ish full-time, and then you've got other people you're contracting, like you said. What was the first thing you recognized you needed to do to get this thing turned around and to make it into the product that you wanted to? Because there's two things. There's like the want to do something cool and have some fun and design, have some control and design control or whatever and creative on the thing that you want to do. It's another thing to be able to sell that and turn that into a business. What's the first thing you had to do?
I started with a blank canvas. I had gone to SHOT Show in 2020, January, right before COVID kind of shut everything down. And I heard over and over and over about handguard strength and the attachment point of a handguard. And I remember looking at it and going, like, I get it, that might be a little stronger, but you're still, like, it's still band-aiding. We're still looking at something from, we can't change X, but we'll just change the fastener. And I remember thinking, like, that's the wrong way to go about any of this. Like, there's so many, like, why?
Because you're looking at it in all its constituent parts versus looking at it from the inside, like the whole as an entire system. Is that it? Because I think I know where you're going with this because I'm a little bit familiar with it. But yeah, you're looking from the outside in, and how do we do things on the outside? Well, maybe if we're looking at like building motors, for example. Like if I want to increase horsepower, there's a lot of ways for me to do this. I can strap on new manifolds, new carburetors, new fuel injection systems. I can put on headers, on my hot rod or whatever else, and that all is going to produce a little bit of horsepower externally. But then there's all the internal work that can be done to a motor that really is going to translate to the power. Now we start going with, bigger cylinders. We go with different pistons. We're doing things with the crank. We're balancing things. We're nitrating things. We're starting to put in injection ports so that we can, blow and inject this thing. Like everything starts to change from the inside out versus the outside in. But if you're looking for a quick change, and or you don't have the skills, the resources, and process for, knowledge of process in order to be able to do from the inside, which usually is a lot more expensive, right? And it takes it's usually more expensive and it's way more like invasive, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You're left only to go at the outside, especially if you're trying to keep up. You're not trying to keep up. You have nowhere to go but up. So I guess in my analogy there is that the similar way of thinking in terms of what you were doing with this whole handguard system and improving, rigidity and stiffness?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it like everyone was just, they started with a constraint, and the constraint being the upper receiver. And I looked at it and said, well, take that upper receiver out and then like rebuild the upper and then where it attaches. And I was trying to identify what the negative was, like of the current setup. What is the negative? And to me, I'm assuming most people have seen an upper receiver or that are familiar with the AR platform.
It's a fair assumption, yeah.
Yeah. If not, I mean, there's the back end of the gun, and there's about that much of an open thread.
It's like an inch, yeah, at 3/4?
About 3/4. 5/8 to 3/4.
Yeah, so
it's not a ton.
It's not a lot.
And I'm sitting there going,
That's your barrel system. That's your hand guard. Yeah, it's everything.
There's a lot.
And then all the stuff you stack on the outside of that, right? You're running laser, you're running lights, you're running sights, you're running whatever. Yeah.
Bipod. You're putting load on it. You're barricading
strapping
with
your sling to it. Yeah.
And on top of that, you've got a ton of action going. I mean, that is the combustion side. You've got an explosion happening at that point. When I bought Cobalt, I did not run those rifles in classes and in different things that I did because I didn't feel like the product was deserving, and I'm not that guy that's going to, just because I own it doesn't mean I have to like it.
Interesting.
So I ran my BCM rifles, and I probably own 11 of them.
They're tried and true, man.
They're great rifles. And I remember they made some changes a few years ago talking about beefing up areas or changing dimensions and structure of like forward assist, the components behind it. And they talked about like that being a weaker area. And so I took that along with the idea of a strong handguard. And like, why don't we invert it? Let's completely, I call it deslaving, but completely separate the handguard from the barrel, because all of these systems, the same exact component that you're attaching the barrel with, you're also attaching the handguard. And so any force on one is going to affect the other.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a protection. That handguard is a protection. It's also, we add accessories on it, but it protects the barrel.
Right.
Protects that gas tube, protects all of those things inside. But it can protect it and do its same job without having to be slave to it. And that was kind of the direction we went. I actually had no thought of adoption, like how would it be received or it was going to be adopted.
That was going to be my question.
And that was actually calculated because, well, the calculation of it was, if it doesn't work, I can start back over.
Okay.
If I don't have the buy-in on it, I can start over. But if I do have the buy-in personally,
we're on to something here.
And I can validate it, I can have someone else try it and they can validate it. And that's where I got into utilizing others. I'm going to build a base platform of where I think it should be. And when you do that, and when you start, like you talk about the, a beta area, especially in machining, you're going to miss a bunch of parts. You're going to miss details. You're going to miss like little things that afterwards you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that?
Just an evolution, that has to happen.
You put a product out that validates your theory, and then you work to perfect it. Mm-hmm. And I knew that going into the perfection side, it couldn't be me, or it couldn't be just me. And so, 3 months after starting it, I was connected with a former Army Special Operations dude, Rick Hogg. Warhog Tactical is his company, and got connected to him. Said, "Can I send you a rifle?" And what's funny is I told him, "Look, I don't want you to tell me the good of it. I want you to tell me what's bad. Like, I want
try and break it.
Yeah, give me your honest feedback." And he just laughed and he's like, that you don't have to ask.
You don't
like,
want it.
I'm
you're going to get it. Yeah, whether you like it or not.
I'm going to give it to you. Yeah. And ironically, the first time we met was actually several months later. And that first time, he's like, "Can we go to the shop?" And after I was trying to drop him off at his hotel, and we were there till like 2:30 in the morning, and he was just like going after things, not bad or
Was he beating you up?
No, he thought he was,
okay.
But it wasn't personal, and it wasn't like belittling in any way.
It was honest.
It got to the point where it was just like minor pieces that I'm like, I'd never thought about that. But how could I? Like, that's not my background.
Right.
Up until this point, I was like, the bulk of my training was based around home defense, concealed carry. I'd never owned a plate carrier up until Cobalt, but I started hearing people talking about how the stock interacts with your loadout, your kit, and I'm going, what? Like, why would I ever think of that? But then,
that's why you get with these guys.
Yeah, but then I'm going, well, I should know exactly. Like, I should have a clue what they're talking about. I'm never going to be them, but I need to at least have a little bit of understanding of what they're going through. So, I bought some kit. I bought some stuff that it's like all testing.
It's all coming up, right? So you're like, we'll fill this out as we go.
Yeah,
going with it. Yep. So you got all these, like you're recognizing you have all these little fine adjustments that you have to make. You've got a design guy, right? You got some level of manufacturing, right? And you've got ideas. Now you got somebody that's kind of testing it. In order to, what's the next step? Like, oh God, okay, now I have all these things now I know what I don't know, aside from, the kit stuff and whatever else, just in terms of the gun building piece. What has to happen next in order to kind of take the thing to the next level? Now I have all this feedback. Were you equipped to do this? Were you equipped to make these changes? Or the things that you needed to do next with the company in order to make those kind of changes to get, like, for lack of a better term, like the sign off from a guy like Rick?
Yeah. I think like being equipped to do those things, that's what we were perfecting, was being able to take an idea or a problem that was seen and then come up with a solution for it. What I wasn't equipped with was I'm not going to say go-to-market ability, but a get the word out ability in this industry. I don't come from, one, I'm not a marketer, but two, I didn't have I wouldn't have ever been able to do that on my own.
To navigate that,
Yeah. Because it requires social media. And at that point, I didn't even know where to go to get a login or like anything like that. So,
It's asking me for a profile picture. What the hell is that? What am I supposed to do here?
yeah. But there was a guy that kept reaching out to me, and I was like, dude, I've never met you. I'm not going to just like turn things over. His name's Jack Callahan, Whiskey Savage on Instagram. And after about 3 months of him pushing, I'm like, all right, man, let's go down this path, but we're going to meet in person. And he came out, brought a videographer and just a couple people just to roll. And by fate, Gabe was in the area, and he was friends with the videographer, and just so happened to show up and walked in. He looked like hell, like he had been gone for 3 weeks and just working hard. And he's like, I'm Gabe. I'm with Roscoe Manufacturing. I'm like, dude, I have been trying to call you. Like, I'm sure you're slammed with everything else. He's like, man, I got you covered now. And it was like within a couple hours, things just kind of clicked, and he kind of saw what we were doing. He understood the vision I had and where we wanted to take things, and it just kind of launched from there.
Yeah, Gabe's something. So I had the opportunity to meet Gabe the other day and spent some time over the last couple of days actually just rapping with him. And I just go back to kind of where I started with this, and like you used the term, we chose each other in these relationships and the company that you're building. And that one's an interesting one for me again, because this is a guy that's been wildly successful in the things that he's done before, and maybe a little bit undercover in some ways or way or another. And the guy that's reaching out to you, constantly for 3 months and, hey, let's get together. And you're finally doing that. That was more for me of like that they're choosing you in a way. They're jocking you. They're trying to court you, or, a guy like Gabe who you just kind of wound up in the same room together somehow or whatever. And then all of a sudden, like there's this magic, right, that happens. And that's, like people like to tell stories like that. And I think that the story gets told a lot. But the reality of it is just not really there. It's a fairy tale, like it makes for a good story, but what's really going on, at the end of the day. But like Gabe's a guy who's like, I know I'm all in. I'm all in with you now. I'm all in with Cobalt, and we're going all the way to the end. I don't know what that looks like, but we're going all the way to the end, just like you going, I'm buying this Connex box, kind of thing. And I think that's the difference. There's no fighting it. It's just, I get you. I see where you're going with, I see where you're going with this thing. And that's kind of what I get from some of the other guys on the team. I mean, you got Mike B down there who's doing his thing and what he brings to the table. And then, I met some of the sales guys down there. There seems to be this common thread of, no, I see where you're going, and I got you on this. And the part of what I get when talking with them and kind of seeing what's happening is that the trust that they have in you to have maybe packed up shop from wherever they were previously to come do this thing with you, but the trust that you have with them to let them do their thing. And you're not... my impression is that you're not being restrictive. You're giving them all the autonomy that they need because of there's a trust there, and they're producing, right? So there's at the end of the day, and Gabe's one of those guys. Like he's out there. He's got all kinds of ideas. Do you ever have to pull like the reins back on him or whatever? Or do you just kind of let him do his thing?
Only like once or twice a day.
That's good.
I told him early on, like, I'm not a marketer, but I've also run businesses. And as a marketer, you are going to want the world. And when we use 5%, or you're able to do 5% of what you want, like that's just going to be the back and forth we deal with, and how we pick and choose things, because there's a lot of facets and a lot of things that have to be considered in every piece of the business. And until we're working as like, firing on all cylinders where, the focus isn't on sales this month and then production on this month and then marketing on the next month. Like that makes a very difficult growth pattern and trajectory. And so the idea being that we work as fast and as hard as we can to get it to where everything's running smoothly. And then that 5% can come 7%, 10%, and then on and on. And as it took me a long time to learn with Gabe because he is he's a passionate Cuban, and that passion it comes like so raw.
I know the type, man,
dude. Yeah. And like I would think for the longest time, like I have just offended this guy, like he hates me, and he'd always come back and be like, I'm not offended, like I'm gonna give it to you hard, but like at the end of the day, like I just have your back.
Right.
And once words become like reality, and you've got, when he tells me, or when we tell each other, like I've got your back, and it invokes that like powerful feeling, that's when things get really, really special.
Yeah, hair stands up on the back of your neck, right? And like, look, we're doing this, and it maybe doesn't make you do things that are outside of character, but it certainly gives you like a confidence to be able to do things that you may have had questions about. And the things that you guys are doing are pretty bold. But at the same time, it's not brash. It's not in your face. It's not offensive. And you're telling the story here today to me, and people are hearing that. But the people that are telling the story are the end users. And that's what I get. I mean, that's how this happened today, is because I'm one of those end users and have talked to another end user, and they're the ones that are really like, well, the marketing is happening. And like I said before, like in some of these end users are kind of, I would almost call like the middle user, right? Because they're teaching more of the Joe Citizen guys like me, or even like law enforcement or whatever. So important to have those kind of relationships and build that kind of trust, to where they'll have that same conversation with guys like me, like, look, this is why we use this rifle, or this is why we're using this product. You can give me all the technical specs and all the cool innovation and design things that you guys have put into it to make the product that you have. But there's also this, and by the way, let me tell you about the team, and they all know you, right? They all know you, and they all said, I could drop names, I'm not going to do that. You know who these people are, but and for the people listening, if these people have been on the show, and they're going to be on the show, and you'll see them all over, Instagram, and they are not the all show, no go Instagram influencer, like going back to like, I don't even know what an influencer is. I wouldn't know how to influence anybody any there. These are just genuine dudes that really actually keep it a fairly low profile, except if you know. And what I mean by that is, like, there's the Joe Citizen that knows it's really trying to get in touch with these guys or be around that circle of people that is doing the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing. And by the way, they also know their shit. They're doing a really good job with that. But it's also guys at a much higher level, right, that are trusting you and trusting your company with the product. And what I find is they all talk with one another, and they're all interacting, and they're all engaging one another. And just like you were calling up other people and asking them to punch holes in your, in your product, you go back to Warhawk Tactical, right? And like, tear this thing apart and tell me everything I need to fix. They're coming up with their own training programs or their own training methods. They all share a very similar philosophy, but their methods are a little bit different. That's what makes them unique and individual. They're checking in with one another. Like, hey, I'm doing this. What do you think about this? I just learned this, and I'm thinking about making this change. Or send me that new program. Or they're like, hey, I just came up with this new program. I'm going to send it to you, dude. Tell me what you think. It's interesting that's what's driving all of this now, versus the top down with, let me market this to you and let me tell you why this is the best product. These guys are developing their own product, right? But they're using your product as the tool, right, for the tool of choice. I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Like, how does that make you feel?
Responsible. Like, I mean, I don't make a product that is and an attachment. I don't make a product that is a wall piece like that just sits there in, you know, a benign object. I make something that is designed to save a life, to take a life. And the people that put that trust in me is, it's humbling. And I mean, dude, I have had so many sleepless nights, like anxiety, because of that. And yeah, I've told this story to a few people before, but one of the guys I first met in California, he's a law enforcement officer on a SWAT team, and we hit it off, man. We became really good friends. He uses the gun and was giving me lots of feedback. And one day he came to me and said, I just got approval, and I'm going to be running your gun as my duty rifle. And my heart sank.
Right.
Like that responsibility. I mean, like, I know him, know his family, know his kids. Like, yeah, to have that on, like, my shoulders.
It's heavy.
It's that's a burden. And if you don't take that seriously, I feel like that, like, I couldn't see myself not taking that seriously. And it really kicked things into gear for me. And, you know, I turned those sleepless nights of tossing and turning into time spent in the shop, understanding where deficiencies were and how we can make it better. Our platform has always been around performance, the performance of that firearm, predictability, consistency. When you shoot that thing, how do we minimize the recoil enough that no matter if you've got a stable position in your shoulder, you're set and you're shooting, mm-hmm. or whether you're ducking behind something, sticking your gun around the corner and having to fight for your life, or behind a vehicle, behind whatever, it doesn't matter where it goes. That's what's important, is you know exactly what's happening with the gun. Our buffer system, it wasn't where I wanted it to be. And I'd been working on it. You know, I met Voltor a while before, and we were doing a few things with them. It was mostly just a meet and greet, but Brandon over there had, you know, it was one of those things, like, we just hit it off. And, like, relationships are super important to me. Mm-hmm. And so when I find dudes that have that same passion or have that same willingness to work with others and to make improvement and to do things, I latch on to those things. And I also know that, like, I'm not going to solve everything. Yeah. I'm not the expert in everything, and it'd be silly to think that I'd ever become it. So they had a cool product, but there were some changes that I was like, you know what, if we could do this, that's what I would like to see, and I would like to test it out. It took us about 13 months to get to where we were, and, like, you look at it and you're like, that doesn't seem like a 13-month project, but there's a lot goes into that stuff. And I always tell people, like, when you see a simplified product that is different, the process, or, you know, my process anyway, is to take it as complicated as possible, achieve your result, and then go as simple as you can get it, because mm-hmm. simplicity is repeatable. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the game plan we did. And it was when we finally got that buffer system, that all the other pieces that we're working on in there, to May, really the end of May this year, that I kind of, that anxiety eased. The responsibility didn't ease.
Right, I gotcha.
And the accountability didn't ease, but the anxiety that I had from it did.
You started to feel better about it all, yeah?
I felt confident.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, you can't rest on that. It's a constant drive, but we know our par level, and we know where we should be.
Yeah, you mentioned the importance of the responsibility. The guys that have sat in that chair, who I mentioned are the guys that are talk so highly of you and your product, say the exact same thing about their responsibility as instructors, and teaching people, and that it's on them. They're teaching people life-saving or life-taking, skills or fundamentals or things that they may have to use to protect their family or, their loved ones or, take on duty, however they're making a living, in this world. And so they take it as seriously. So when I hear people that teach and come from that background and then, hear you and how they've, you get effectively combining forces, whether that's, in an agreement somewhere or not, they're cut from the same cloth and they take it as seriously. So when I hear them recommending a product, I take it seriously. And that is different. It isn't an accessory. This is not an accessory. This is not something you strap on, can be easily replaced in the field or anything. There is zero room or margin for error or failure because the consequences, the ultimate consequence.
Absolutely.
Potentially, one way or another. In terms of like the innovation and, you'd think at some point, particularly with firearms, certainly technology changes, materials change, things like that change. And keeping up with that has got to be a full-time job. Like what's going on out there? How much of what you're seeing happening around you in the industry and with other, are you looking over your shoulder? Or are you like, hey, these guys are doing this really well and we should be doing more like that? Are you modeling? Do you model the things that you do after other people? I'm just curious. Or is this really just very organic between you and the team and the people that you work with?
I have tried ever since I've had a driver's license to go straight while looking over my shoulder talking to other people. But it's not, that's a joke. But no, you can't look behind you and have any expectation of moving forward. Mm-hmm. I tell my guys, and I have said it from the very beginning, like, we're never going to have the best rifle in the world. Our goal is to always have the second best because we should always be looking to make it better. Mm-hmm. And if we lose sight of that, or we look like, yeah, we made it, someone else is going to pass us. And I expect people to make something that I feel is better than my product. It would be really sad if they didn't, because if all I'm competing with is myself, and don't get me wrong, like, my opinion is my opinion, and I'm certainly biased on things.
We all are, man.
But if in my own mind I'm just competing with myself, like, this is gonna just turn into a circle.
Yeah, it's an echo chamber.
And I don't ever want to get to that point. It's interesting though, because as we were going out there and reshaping what Cobalt was, there was a piece that we held on to in the entire process, and it was, it may feel like we're going backwards right now, but we have to reestablish a reputation. We have to build a reputation based off of quality delivering of our product. And so, you look at my product and it's like, there's some big differences, but there's only one component, like one piece of my product that is essentially not compatible with everything else in the market, and it's the way that handguard and upper mate. There's a lot I want to do. You talk about materials, like, man, people still argue about a material that was chosen in the 50s for specific parts of the gun, and I'm fairly certain we've created materials and alloys that are
probably a bit better,
significantly better. Not to mention, we have machining capabilities that far exceed where we were years and years ago.
Yeah. So why aren't we thinking about this? Yeah.
It's easy to get stuck, and it's easy to, companies that have massive success, those are the companies that typically fall behind. It takes big moves, and it takes a big splash to kind of shake people awake. And I'm not there yet. We're moving in an organic in an organic way, but the trajectory that we have is way steeper than it should be. But
what you said should be, you're being humble there, man. I mean, I get it. There's trajectory and there's velocity, right? And being successful. And I get what I hear from you is you're downplaying the trajectory at which you're continually headed, which is up, but you're talking about the angle of that trajectory right now, but you're being very patient with the velocity. But at some level, right, trajectory is going to probably catch up, right? And that velocity is going to start going up at a very, very steep angle as well. And a lot of times that comes with a new product or doing something that's completely different or innovative. And I hear you like being very aware of self-reflective, like not being in that echo chamber, like asking yourself the hard questions and asking other people to answer the hard questions for you. The question that I have then is, we're looking at this trajectory and it looks pretty great to me, man. I'm from the outside looking in as a business owner, as a consumer, just as a dude, as a fan, and also I like to think myself as well read as I can be on what's going on out there. Like what is my capability? What's my bandwidth and whatnot? And I see that thing moving in an incredible way. I think there's a lot of businesses could learn from the things that you just said right there. But with velocity, on the velocity aspect, is there things that you can talk about, or is there something that maybe more of the question is, what are you the most excited about right now with regard to Cobalt? Like, what's the thing that you already told us what sort of keeps you fired up on a daily basis, right? That underlying sort of, motivation to this has to be right every single time. We can't put that out. Was there anything that gets you fired up beyond that, like that you're super excited about right now?
We've got some things in the works. For the longest time.
I try, guys. I try.
Yeah. For the longest time, everyone asks us about our large frame platform, 308, 65 Creedmoor. Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? Cobalt One had one. And again, I bought one from another company a couple years.
Like better?
And it was significantly better. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, we're cutting that one. Like, I'm not going to put a product that I'm not going to use myself out. But been kind of slowly working. The timing has to be right. The most important thing was that the small frame platform was to a spot we wanted it to where that could then mature in its iteration, and we're at that spot. We're in the middle of that spot right now. Large frame stuff is in the works. It's coming.
Awesome.
Had a conversation last week with my design engineer that I guarantee you he's not happy with me, because we've been going down a path and I just up and
pulled the plug on it,
180'd him. Yeah. And he at least, he got it. It made sense to him. And so it was like, okay, I understand why we're doing this.
But you're literally going back to the drawing board now?
Oh, fully. I think we're to a spot, at least we'll be to a spot when we launch that it won't be out of this world what we're doing and how it's being structured. There'll be a narrative around it that allows, kind of like what with our upper receiver right now. When we pull it apart, when we go over it with people, they're like, "Oh, that makes sense. Like, that makes a lot of sense." And I think that's where this will go to. It won't be wildly different to completed product. Won't look crazy. We're not putting spikes on it.
It's not gonna be red barrels and blue comps and stuff. That's interesting what you said there about having to go back to I said going back to the drawing board, but you said pulling a 180 on them. You opened this up with the blank canvas, and that being a little bit out of character in walking into a situation with that blank canvas. But what an awesome opportunity, right? To have that blank canvas and be able to do what you want, the way that you want, for the reasons that you feel are right things or right reasons, and the intentions there. What I'm hearing you say is like, well, I guess what I take away is what a fantastic place to be in business and life, and with the team that you have around you and what you're currently doing, to be able to have a blank canvas again, right? And or maybe you had some stuff on a canvas and just go, you know what? No, let's start over. Because not all these companies have that ability to do that. They don't have the ability to, like, it's a cliche term, but pivot in that way, or self-correct is more, I think, what the term should be in that way. Like, this isn't where we're going, because they're already so far down the investment path. They're trying to fulfill somebody else's, like a board of directors' agenda. They've already committed to, or over-committed to something, a contract or a multitude of contracts, or they're feeling that they're looking over their shoulder because they know somebody else could step in. You're not having to worry about any of that stuff.
No, and I mean, the AR platform, it's a little bit different than the large frame stuff, because there's a definite standard, and there is a long history and tradition of a standard. You get into that 308 realm of things, there's some acceptances and there's some quasi standards, but you still have two very distinct structural platforms. And so it was already one of those things where we could step back and say, do we want to choose one? Do we want to choose the other? Do we want to combine them? Do we want to combine them with a mixture of what we're doing on the other side? And then it got to the point where I'm like, this is not a bigger AR-15. This is not a bigger, it's not just...
It's just not more bulky.
It's not just like taking two fingers and expanding it out a little bit.
Yeah, on your screen.
Yeah. Like there's geometries, there's pressure, there's capabilities that these pieces or these rounds have that is very difficult to achieve in that smaller platform for good reason. So why do we feel like we have to start with a box? Let's just bury it and start with what we like, the end result we want, and then we work backwards.
You reverse engineer it.
Yeah, it's funny to say that now, but I think once it's done, it'll that result will kind of show that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, to me that's so exciting, because you really get to go through the process, and how cool for the people on the team to be a part of that, to be able to see and give their input or their feedback, however much is shared or not shared, or, you may not want a lot of those opinions, but I don't know. But going into it with the trust and the honesty that exists out there, and the it's called quote unquote friends that you have in the industry as you're going along, where you can check in with them and not feel pressured into putting together a product or putting out a product that you're not fully happy with or may not perform to the standard that you'd like it to perform to. And what I get from you is you're about setting a new standard. That might sound a little bit weird. That isn't what you said. That's just what I'm saying, right? You look to set a new standard for that particular platform. And who's to say you can't? No. Everything, like you said, it's one of two. You're in this camp or in that camp, or we're doing this or we're doing that. Why? Again, going back to the handguard, right? Well, why are we being limited by that? And that's one of the most exciting parts about the industry as a whole for me is I think there are people like you and Cobalt that are thinking that way, and they're generally lesser known, right? Now, Cobalt's making a name for itself, man. It's really coming around. But I see a lot of as I'm here at SHOT Show and I'm visiting with people, and some people I know, some people I don't know, but I'm listening to them, and they're very much in the same mindset, and they could take so much away from, what you're providing right now about, like, I'm just going to say it, might sound cheesy or corny to people, it's very fucking brave. I mean, it's bold, some of the things you guys are doing and the way you've structured it. And that kind of decision-making process, or kind of we don't really necessarily need to follow this tried and true system again, or 50 years ago of making parts and connectors, whatever the hell else is out there. And the old school going, yeah, well, he's barking up the wrong tree, or he's going down the wrong path. These guys are just trying to do something fancy or whatever else. It's not in the name of any of that at all. It's really about making a better product. And so there's these factions of people holding the industry back that call themselves innovators, that kind of gatekeep or hold the keys to huge marketing dollars, or, budgets, or, 10,000 square foot booths at SHOT Show, or whatever the case is. It's not to take anything away from them, but they're limiting themselves when you're looking at it going, this is limitless, but we're not trying to get to the end at a velocity that doesn't make sense to make sure we can provide that product. That is refreshing, because we see so much stuff being turned down. I mean, I'm walking around downstairs, I'm looking at it, that looks really cool, but I would never buy that. And that doesn't serve anybody's needs at the end of the day. It really is about the basics and the things that you need on a daily basis. There's a lot of things you can strap on your gun, or, put in your backpack, or wear on your feet, or whatever the hell, you're talking about. You guys are really just literally twisting the dials, and the quality control piece is being so high for you. I've mentioned that on other shows about Cobalt, from what I know. And I think those are the real pieces that drive the innovation to a level that I don't know. I'm probably not articulating this the right way, but there's a little bit of genius in it. But there's also
definitely not articulating that the right way.
I know. I knew you're going to say that. I think there is, man. I think there's a little bit of genius in it. And I respect that, you being very humble about it, but it is impressive to me. I think it's encouraging too that there are people that are doing this, because, again, as big as the industry is, they'll always oftentimes default to kind of, well, there's this brand and they've always done it this way, and they've got that. But they also have, enough backing. There's enough margin there for them to turn out a product that maybe isn't that good, right? And it's not going to kill them, as a company when they get bad feedback on it, or quite frankly, it literally or figuratively blows up in somebody's face. You don't have that either, right? Which I respect. Like, what I mean by that is like, that type of thing, based on everything you've just said, like turning out a product that you wouldn't be happy with, that maybe has some flaws that may not perform, I'd imagine would ruin a company like Cobalt in a heartbeat. Wouldn't take very long.
That would ruin me as an individual.
That's the bigger point.
More than anything, yeah.
That's the bigger point. I think that's what, as I'm, again, on the consumer end of things, on a lot of these things, I think more than ever, people want to know who they're getting their stuff from. Who are the people behind this? And it's not just the influencer that's using it, but who are the people that are putting it out? And that's not been a thing in this industry for a long time. Or forever. It's really been, there's a CEO somewhere, right? There's a board of directors somewhere. There's a private equity fund that's dumped millions and millions or more than that into this company. You're just going off a brand or a label or what's stamped on the, stamped on the magwell or whatever the thing is. People are starting to respect who the people are that actually are building this stuff. That's why the SHOT Show is so important, I think. Like, so we don't get that opportunity to get exposure to guys like you out there. So I'll ask another question, just not I'm watching this person from behind or what's on my heels. But is there anybody in the industry like right now that really motivates you or really inspires you? Like as a builder, as a maker, as an owner, as a CEO?
There's several. I would love to be able to just talk them up, because some of these people have a misperception of who they are, and it's just, in my opinion, it's people who either don't know them or have just taken something at face value and kind of run with it. I'd love to call them out too, or not call them out, but like
call the people that did that or said that. Yeah.
No, like I'd love to talk. I've got some stuff that I'm working on with NDAs that I can't, like some of these people, but hopefully one day soon I will be able to. There are a few. Voodoo Gunworks, Paul Parrott.
Okay.
He's a longtime guy in the industry, was with PMC a long time. He's doing some really cool stuff. They make Voodoo Gunworks makes, and they started making higher end 22s. From a training side or the NRL 22 side.
Okay.
When I first thought that, I'm like, man, that is a stupid expensive 22 rifle. But what they do and the way that they do it, and then the constant drive that he has to recognize a need for improvement, but then also the people he has surrounded himself with, I have a massive amount of respect. And he's just such a good dude. Like him and his wife, Jill, they're like the sweetest people as a couple. Who else from a company level? I don't know. There's a lot of people in this industry. Like a lot of the guys I work with, I told you I was a big fan of knives.
Mm-hmm.
Microtech knives.
Mm-hmm.
Been a lifelong, well, probably not a lifelong fan, because I don't remember much earlier than kind of high school on that side.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, but I just remember for the longest time wanting to be able to afford one day a Microtech knife. And when I started Cobalt, when I bought Cobalt, about 8-9 months into it, we had an opportunity to have our rifles in a kind of a competition thing, and walked up to a guy. I'm like, excuse me, are you X-Ring channel on YouTube? He's like, yes, sir. And I'm like, you used to shoot for Cobalt, didn't you? Yes, sir. Can I ask you what your experience was like? And it's a hilarious story to me, but it was literally the words that I first heard him say were yes, sir, and the worst fucking experience of my life.
Wow.
Is Ray Helms is who it is. His YouTube channel is the X-Ring channel. And I remember sitting there going, that doesn't surprise me. Like, I'm sorry, introduced myself. I bought the company last year, made some changes. I would really love your opinion. And he walked over and he picked him up, and he immediately grabbed and looked at one thing. He's like, okay, well, you changed that. That's good. What's going on here? That's interesting. And then I was like, can I just get you to try it? Like, I'm a different guy. I'm not that person. Mm-hmm. And I just want your opinion. I knew immediately from like those first 3 responses that he was a guy I wanted to work with, because he's so honest, like brutally honest. And he has no qualms about holding back or sugarcoating anything. A couple months later, we started working, talking together, and he reached out and said, hey, I work for Microtech Knives, the owner, Tony Marfione. And he's like, I don't do this often. I really don't, but he would really like it if you build him a rifle. And he's like didn't know if I knew who Microtech was, and had no idea what that impact was for me. Uh-huh. As
how cool,
super fanboy on that piece. And I was like, man, are you sure? Like, he's way cooler than I am. But I got an opportunity to travel with him a little bit to a tournament, or to a competition, shooting competition, and it was just he and I in a truck. And he gave me so much advice and so much of his personal experience in the firearms industry and in the the manufacturing side of things. It was it no longer was that fanboy side of things, but like a mentorship and like there's like a friend that came out of it. And I mean, I'm sure he has no idea the impact he had from that point. And it's interesting. You hear people have different opinions of people, and they don't always know who the individual is, or They don't take a step back and kind of look at them from the individual basis. I think we get way too wrapped around, genericizing everyone. I don't even know if that's a word, but it just sounds right. Like we lump people into categories and then judge them based off of that. And, I was experiencing on a micro level a lot of the things that he had shared with me, and just that mentorship side of it and who he is as like at his heart. I have so much respect for that dude. And he's become a good friend, like a really good friend.
I think just going back, you've mentioned it now. I think you said it 3 or 4 times in the last couple of minutes, and that is the willingness to share, like, and reach out and be honest about like opinions or about things, wanting that honesty in return, being smart, and then having that intelligence. There's an intelligence level. There's also, in some sense of that, there's an emotional intelligence. Like, I'm being very honest with you. It's not an attack, but you asked me for my opinion, so I'm going to give you my opinion. Don't ask me for my opinion if you can't handle that, kind of thing. But then you finished it all up with those things and such a good dude, and the wife and the husband, just like the sweetest people. It's the same shit people are saying about you, Aaron.
Try to be a good dude.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So I think, just in terms of the influence that you're having, again, in the business and whatnot, and again, the innovation on the product and, what you're doing for people, the responsibility you feel to it, it may be more common than I understand or that we know or whatnot, but it's not a lot of people talking about that. So I appreciate you bringing that to the table and being honest and upfront. I wish more people would spend less time, looking at Cerakotes, not to take away from your Cerakote guy, and spend more time looking at where did this product actually come from and how did it get here, and obviously more importantly, at the end of the day, how did it wind up in my hands? Who were the people along the way that influenced this? And if I take a calculated approach to, making sure that I put this product, the right kind of product in my hand and the reasons why. Like, let's take some real stock on how I wound up where I am with this tool, whatever it is, or whatever product it happens to be, because I think that's important. I think that's what's driving this business. And here's the other thing that I see is particularly here at the SHOT Show is, this might being my first experience, and again, sort of, I look at myself as an infant in this whole thing and trying to take it all. It's very overwhelming. It's extraordinarily overwhelming, actually, I think is probably the right way to describe it, is there have been sort of these older factions that have always driven the thing, right? And there are companies like yours that are driving their own things in their own way. And then there are people that are caught in the middle of this, right? And they're trying to figure out where they belong. And that's the important part of, I think, about this show and bringing the people together, is because I'm having these conversations with people like you, and I'm seeing like people are starting to get it. Like, and there's like a whole nother, I was actually having this conversation with Gabe. We almost said, like, finish one another's statement is like, there's the second generation. Yeah, you're sticking because you probably had the same conversation with them. It's like this 2.0 of the gun industry that's coming through right now. And you're starting to see this maturity, right? And this is much broader depth of field than people have had, or at least seemingly have had in a very long time. It's very smart. It's very calculated. It's very entrepreneurial versus I'm just going to work for the guy and take the paycheck and maybe make compromises in my integrity or the things that I really believe because I need my, I want to get paid, or I can't take a step back here. Like, I've worked so hard to get to where I am for whatever those reasons and whatever you've got liability-wise and lifestyle-wise and whatever else. And they're either unwilling or they don't have the intestinal fortitude to step out of that, to maybe start something new and contribute to this 2.0 version that I see happening, and that I am excited to, at some level, be a part of, because those are the people I want to talk to, right? Those are the people that are bringing this up. I don't know if you see it the same way. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I was actually laughing because Gabe will always try to finish your sentence for you. Like,
Okay. That is funny. It's that Cuban thing.
Yeah. But I think as a macro society and just human nature, our tendency is to take the path of least resistance. And so when there is a standard, a culture, the way things have always been, it's easier to just float.
Go with the flow.
And most people do. I mean, success isn't a common place. It's not an easily achieved thing. I mean, you look at, in every facet of life, it's the few that rise to the top. It's the few that are different. It's the few that, and that's why it's hard for me to generalize. And so I really try to take a look. It takes a conscious effort and a deliberate effort to look at the individual and to pull everything else back. I don't care what person X said about person Y. Mm-hmm. If I don't have an experience with person Y, why would I just lock, stock, and believe person X? Like mm-hmm. that to me is a disingenuous skew at life. I mean, it makes things tougher. It makes things like way more depressing. I'd rather, like, okay, if this person doesn't like this person, maybe it's a personal problem. Maybe it's something. Like, I actually can like both of them and have a good relationship with both of them. And it's been a lot. For me, it's just easier. Like, mm-hmm. I'm busy.
Yeah.
And if
there's not a lot of extra energy, I'm sure, in there for any of that other garbage.
Yeah, but it's also a choice to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
100% agree with you, yeah.
It's easy to get there, but then, like, you just kind of swirl in this, like, misery of things. And I think from a political standing of where things are with firearms, with our industry, with, politics in general, I think the few are starting to pop up and become more and more. Mm-hmm. And those people are kind of taking a stand and saying, like, I'm not that way, and we need to be better. Mm-hmm. And generationally, we change constantly. Mm-hmm. But it just, when you're in the middle of it, it seems like it's forever.
Yeah, it does. You're right. It's actually a really good perspective and kind of looking at it. But you're right. Like the few getting maybe a little louder, not more aggressive, just louder, right? And maybe the message is starting to come together. I think they're also, I'm seeing that, I'm feeling that. And you're right about being in the middle of it, and I have a patience issue, so I'd like to see it happen faster, and I'd like to see more change happen faster, and I'd like to see people stop doing stupid stuff, or saying stupid things. But I think a little bit of that comes with a few of the few, sometimes need to stand up and go, no, and I'm not taking that money anymore, or I'm not going to be part of this team anymore, mm-hmm. and here are my reasons why. Like, not I hate you or your product sucks or whatever else. I'm making this decision for my own reasons, and here's what some of those are. And they're generally, again, it's those partnerships, those relationships, like courtship, whether it's business or otherwise, like there has to be a goals and values alignment. I talk about this, and that's a tough balance to keep. But as long as it starts in the right place, it's usually okay. If it feels like it's getting off base, then we can always come back to those things. Like, okay, hold on. Like, what are our goals and what are our values? And if those things start to become disaligned or unaligned or challenged in any way, it's generally when you start having issues. And if people aren't respectful of what those are and supporting other people in those things, in those two things, I think it's right to be able to stand up and go, nope. Our values are not aligned here anymore. Like, we are moving two different directions, and that's okay. That's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fine. But I need to make a change. This isn't a personal thing. These are things that it just is. I don't really like this term because it is very reductionary, but it is what it is. So if we can't move together in this direction with these things as our home base, it's time for me to move on and do something different. Yeah, I hope we see more of that.
Yeah, I mean, when your values and your purpose, you say goals.
Mm-hmm.
I say, like, for me, it's my purpose. What's my purpose?
Why? Yeah.
My values, those are easier to, because as long as I'm honest with myself, the values are going to stay there.
Yeah.
My purpose, as long as that purpose can be affixed to what it started out to be, and the way we get there can change. But if I'm not basing everything and keeping that in line, like, your purpose can change. And sometimes our scenario in life and business, like, it kind of can dictate a little bit where the purpose goes. But we need people around us to constantly kind of reposition us.
Everybody
to say, like,
does, yeah.
Dude, recheck your purpose.
Yeah.
And if we just start having that mentality in everything that we do, and for me, like, I'm not really philosophical at all, like preachy in how I do things, but it just makes sense to be simplified. And if everything in life kind of follows the same pattern, down, like, my clothing, it's going to be simple there.
Right.
But, like, every decision I make, whether it's a product that I want, a structure for my business, my interaction with my family, my interaction with my friends, everything kind of follows that same path of justification. And that justification, like, what's my purpose?
Mm-hmm.
Define your purpose and just stick there. And as long as you have good intentions, something's gonna,
it's usually a positive result. Yeah.
You're either gonna hit your mark, or, like, you're still gonna be able to sleep at night.
Right. You come back to home base and reevaluate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go back a different direction. Wise words, my friend. Wise words. I cannot thank you enough for taking time of what I know is an extraordinarily busy schedule for you. You've been giving a lot of people your energy and your time, and that includes the people on your staff, but all the people here at SHOT Show. Again, I see every time I go by, I've been by the Cobalt booth in the last couple of days, it's people 5 deep, wanting to chat and talk with you guys and get a piece. And you guys are giving them that. Like, there's long conversations happening at that booth, but it's also looks like friends and family. There's a lot of high fives, a lot of handshakes, a lot of chest bumps. And that's part of the reason I was so excited to meet with you today, man. So I know you're probably not the high five and chest bump type of dude, but I appreciate you being here today and being so giving and so generous.
My height prevents the high five, so I'll just hug wherever I kind of roll up to someone.
I get you, man. Thank you again, and for your honesty and for trusting me, to sit down and have this conversation. It means a lot.
Oh, thank you. It's not a difficult thing. Like, we chatted and texted back and forth a little bit, and, like, I've seen some of your stuff. Like, you mentioned the family thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's always room for family to grow, and anyone who wants to jump on that journey, because it's a journey that everyone should be contributing to. And I like to think that it's been kind of a quick mating, a quicker way that you've kind of come into that same kind of family, regardless of where things go, and how we interact going forward. But, man, like, you've just kind of, everyone in my group. It's been awesome.
Yeah, it means a ton. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.